see where it goes. Harder than the summer, harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer, you know what I mean. It's that old school drop top, won't let you down. It's that hush, hush, here it comes, talk of the town. Make your head stand up and your chin hit the ground. Get you all fired up, keep working it out. Harder than the summer, harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer, you know what I mean. Harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer, and you know what I mean. Harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer, harder than the summer, harder than the summer. Harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. We got everybody burning at 100 degrees. Harder than the summer, you know what I mean. Harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. Harder than the summer, and I'm feeling the heat. We got
Hey, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Wherever you are tuning in, this is the Speedsters Live Chat. This is a weekly live stream dedicated to cyclists trying to help you to train smarter and go smarter. I'm your host, Louis Pang. I'm a cycling coach with the Psychology Sabah Racing Team. And today we will have Dato Amarjit Singh, the UCI Management Board Committee member, also the treasurer of Asia's Cycling Confederation. Also with us is Ramlan Latiff. He is a UCI coach educator. He is also the former head coach for Singapore cycling. Now, today we will be talking about cycling and COVID-19 and what will be the new norm that we'll be dealing with. And very happy to have the two very learned gentlemen with me, and let's bring them on right away. So, Dato Amarjit, good afternoon to you, and Ramlan, good to see you all the way in Singapore, and Dato Amarjit, of course, in Malaysia, in Ipoh. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Doing good. Really happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation to join you for this great live chat. I'm sure it's going to be very exciting. And Ramlan, good to see you, Ramlan.
Thank you, Dato. Yes, thanks, Louis, for the invitation. So glad to be here, and hopefully we'll have a good chat about what's going on
Sure.
in cycling.
Now, before we dive into the topic, perhaps you guys can walk us through briefly your background, what do you do, and all that. Dato, how about you start first?
I'm from Ipoh, Malaysia. I'm currently the management committee member of the International Cycling Union (UCI) and also executive board member of the Asian Cycling Confederation. And I've been involved with cycling for I think more than 25 years. I started very young as a volunteer, as one of those person who would actually just help out in events. My dad, Tan Sri Dashan, was at that time also the president of the Perak Cycling Association, and he was responsible in building the Weldon Rakyat in Ipoh, which was built in the public donation funds. And so I actually pretty much, cycling has been in my blood. It's been my passion, and from volunteerism, I rank and file. Actually, it was that was the way I went in cycling, and I'm also now the president of the Cycling Association, and the vice president of the Malaysian National Cycling Federation as well. So I'm always very keen to engage in sport and to develop our sport as well. And professionally, I'm a lawyer, and I'm based in Ipoh. So yeah, that's all about me.
Yeah, I believe I have seen pictures of you doing anti-doping seminars, being a commissaire in races. So when you say rank and file, you actually work through the whole ecosystem of the cycling. So you're not just a lawyer that happens to be a board member at UCI. You have actually started from the grassroots. So it's really good to have someone of your caliber and experience to be with us today. And then, of course, Ramlan, maybe you can walk us through your background and what you do and all that.
I am currently a lecturer at Republic Polytechnic. I am a UCI coach educator, and I've been
as we see here on this
UCI
picture, right? This picture
Yes,
here, you
yes,
teaching somewhere in Japan?
This was in Japan. This picture was in Japan recently, and these were coaches from the various clubs and also the national team in Japan. They are, of course, preparing for the Tokyo 2020, which will be held in 21 now. So I've been a UCI coach educator since 2010. And basically, my role was to go out and represent the UCI and provide coaching courses to and education to the national coaches, mainly in Asia and in Africa. Most of my work now is in Asia. I don't have to travel as much to Africa anymore because now they've got somebody around that region that can do the work.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I still coach, maintain a small little grassroots coaching group, and that has been fun, all these years.
Yeah, this is a picture of you in BMX race, isn't it, Ramlan?
Yes. This was from one of the national series, I believe, with one of the riders in the club, a young rider who's up and coming.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and we want to get right into the topic of the day. But we have Darwish Putra Muhammad Sanusi saying hello. Hello to you, and good to have you joining us in the live stream. Now let's get
Hello, Darwish.
now let's get straight into the questions. We are here to deal with how we're going to balance, how we're going to continue cycling in the middle of a pandemic. So obviously, nobody in this world have encountered this before, something of this magnitude and severity and scale. So there are obviously confusion in the early days. Even in the cycling community itself, we see that UCI has announced a new cycling calendar, the Grand Tours, the one-day classics, the Tour de France. All this has been scheduled or rescheduled. On the other hand, in Asia, we have ACC postponing the Road Championship that was supposed to be held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Now, so gentlemen, can you take this away? How safe is it to resume cycling? Because we are seeing, some organizers going ahead with cycling, and some organizers pushing it backwards. So perhaps Dato, you can go first.
No problem. Thank you for the question. I think very very apt question posed by you, Luis. The thing is, you know, this situation is something that nobody has ever faced. It's something that just came almost out of the blue and caught everybody off the guard. I think no one is spared in terms of businesses, even the government, in terms of sporting, in the sporting fraternity as well. Everyone has been affected one way or the other.
Yes.
And of course, it was a very challenging time for the UCI, and with so many races that were registered with the UCI calendar, and having countries, making the call to either postpone or to cancel their event. I mean, that was something huge for many of the organizers. UCI, on the other hand, had to have a very a very positive thought in mind, and they discussed with various stakeholders, and of course, many meetings had taken place before they could come up with a calendar that would include the grand tours, the classics, and some of the other important events. Again, COVID is something that is ever evolving sort of situation.
True.
There can never be a certainty to what is going to happen in 1 month's time. You
Sure.
can never be sure.
Yes.
But I think what UCI did was right. They had to make a decision. They had to make a point. They had to plan ahead. And you just cannot just say we are not going to do anything. And with that in mind, the president of the UCI and with all the relevant stakeholders and the staff have been working overtime during the height of the pandemic in Europe to come up with this proposed calendar. So we hope, the way we see it, the situation in Europe is getting better, and this is a good sign, because that would also mean that the races can hopefully continue and progress as per what has been planned for the new calendar that has been issued.
Yeah.
Now, going back to your question about some countries are opening up and some are taking it back. Like, I mean, in Asia, for example, the Asian Cycling Confederation, we had our executive board meeting 3 days ago,
Yep.
where finally it was decided that the ACC Road Championships will be cancelled for this year. It's not postponed, it will not be relocated, it will be cancelled. So the next event, the next championships will be in 2021. Now, in Asia, it's very different. I mean, things in Asia is still evolving. The dynamics of countries in Asia is also very different.
Yes.
We have some countries that have handled it pretty well. We have other countries that are actually evolving now, where cases are still rising. We have developed countries that are still trying to control the situation. I mean, in
Yes.
Singapore as well.
Yes.
For example, in Singapore, I mean, we have today almost about 300 plus cases that were confirmed, and which is already about 40,000. And even if we were to organize an event, we are concerned that we may not be having sufficient countries to actually take part, because first of all, we have many countries having their borders shut. There is cross-border restrictions.
Yes.
On top of that, many countries are requiring that those who come, they have to have a 14-day quarantine,
Yep.
or if they have gone to a country, when they go back, they have to go to another 14-day quarantine. Now, that is quite a burden actually for
Yes.
cyclists and
True.
for team officials. So with all that in mind, and it will not be proper if we just want to have 5-6 countries coming for the Asian World Championships.
Yes.
I mean, it really dilutes the purpose of having an Asian champ.
Yes.
So
Fair
with
point.
all that in mind, we had no choice, but we just thought that this was the right thing to do, and this was communicated with the UCI, and we said that in Asia for now, I think this will not be a priority. The health of riders are the most important, is most paramount. We are happy that things in Europe are much better, and I think they will evolve to be better, and we hope to see good cycling on TV.
Yes, certainly.
Very very soon.
Okay. Ramlan, what's your take on this?
Um, for me, I think the international calendar will always be very tricky for 2020 for this year, and perhaps even into 2021. Like Datuk mentioned, the situation is always evolving, and we don't know how this thing will turn up in, say, in a month, in a 2 months time. We are hoping for the best.
Yes.
We are hoping that research onto vaccine and medications and all are going well, and that the numbers of those affected by the disease will come down drastically as soon as possible. But we have to be prepared for the worst. And so I think it's prudent that championships, especially international championships, are being rescheduled or cancelled. Local races, local championships, that is a different ball game. So for that, we need to pay close attention to our national authorities.
Yes.
So each of our nations, no matter where we are, first and foremost, listen to the instructions of the national authorities. And I
Yes.
think that is the best way forward for the local races and events, and also training for local cyclists. International events, really very tricky right now. As Datuk mentioned, there are regulations about leaving the country,
Yes.
about going into a new country, quarantine measures, and then on returning back to your home country, there's going to be restrictions on
Yes.
that and quarantine. So the cost would be extremely exorbitant if you were to do these championships. And as Datuk mentioned, how good a competition can we get if only 4 or 5 countries turn up for, especially for international events.
Yes, fair point.
Yeah.
And obviously there's different kind of a mindset and mentality in the Asian region, in the European region, in North America, South America. The political forces are also different. The values, what people value is also different. In some culture, the value of having human rights, having the right to have a debate is is really paramount. And whereas in Asia, the because of the culture of we are more compliant. We don't want to debate when it comes to life and death issues. So we are seeing different kind of response, isn't it? All around the world, there's no one way of solving this problem. But what I have seen recently, last night, is that even countries like Thailand and Malaysia, we are ranked in the top 12 countries in terms of the response to COVID. Top 12 in terms of effectiveness. Also in infection cases. So there's actually a talk going on of establishing the green bubble. So between countries that have things under control, relatively lower infection rate, these countries are trying to set up treaties or MOU that it's safe for these citizens of this country to move about in this region. What do you guys think about that?
I think I will go first, Ramlan. I
Yes,
think
go ahead, Dato'.
of course, setting up this kind of they call it the travel bubble, as you say. I think this is something that has been this idea has been floated around even in Europe. I think they are kind of doing this travel bubble between Estonia, Latvia. I think 3 of those countries where they could move around more freely.
Okay.
This would be something that I think the government, I think they, like for example, Malaysia and Singapore could be one of those, provided that situation in Singapore is very much under control. This could be one of those bubble that that we could float around. Thailand, for example, Vietnam, they have really have the COVID-19 very much under control. Even Laos have been declared as free COVID today.
Yep.
So that is something that as long as I think it needs government support and government's acknowledgement in order to have this kind of arrangement or
Yes.
partnership
Yes.
between all this country.
Taking the lead.
If that happens, only then other things can follow.
Yes.
For example, G to G, they
Yes.
have to start first.
Yes.
And if they can come up with an arrangement, then other things can follow. Then, of course, the next thing would be, is it only open for businessmen? Is it only open for tourism? Is it open for sport? So again, there are so many different criteria
Yes.
that we have to actually look at. So it may sound very simple, but again, it's still, it's
There's
still a
not-
very, quite a complicated thing still.
Really appreciate your perspective, Dato, because sometimes we read the newspaper and we jump into conclusions, or why don't we do this and why don't we do that? You just highlighted the different layers, the different complexities that's involved in implementing like this, and that nobody is truly had any experience to deal with this. So very fair point, Dato. And Ramlan, what's your take on this?
It will take a while to get all this sorted out, all the agreements, all the discussions with interministries, with the different nations. As far as our region is concerned, I guess what we are planning on is, I guess the next big event for our region is the 21 SEA Games, and whether or not we can have that. So that I think, as far as agreements are concerned, with international agreement, that I think would be something that we want to try and figure out also, because ASEAN is not only a sport area for us, but also a big economic region for us.
Yes.
So that will need to be looked into.
Okay.
And then we've got the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games will be very, very tricky, with so many nations coming together and making sure that the safety of the riders, the athletes, the participants, the officials, the spectators, the volunteers, is all taken care of. And without that assurance, it's really going to be very difficult. Therefore, at this time, I think with all the nations, the emphasis right now is trying to get everything under control so that things can go back to normalcy as soon as possible. Now, we have to be mindful that, based on what we've heard about the vaccines and stuff, that is still a way out.
Yeah.
So as we open our countries, we are opening our countries with the understanding that COVID-19 is around us. We have to live within those parameters.
Yes.
And the guidelines that is provided by our national health authorities.
Fair point, because just because the movement restrictions in various countries have been lifted or loosened, it doesn't mean that COVID-19 is any less threatening or deadly. It's still the same. It's just that now maybe we have slightly more understanding about how it passes on from one person to one person. We have a better handle on perhaps what we can do to prevent it from infecting more people. Now, since we are talking about prevention and also solutions, what do you think are the best practices we should adopt? This morning our team went cycling, and the roads are filled with more cyclists than I've seen in the last 2 months, or last 1 month or so. Now, and and what are the best practices that we should adopt now that various countries have loosened the movement control? How do we do this responsibly? And for this one, maybe Ramlan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. As far as best practices, we need to ensure that number one, we are not listening to rumors. There's a lot of rumors floating around right now about the disease, and also some preventive measures that supposedly work. Listen to the instruction of your own health authorities. I cannot
Very good
emphasize
point.
that enough.
Very good point.
So all those rumors that's floating around, social media, make sure those can be qualified before we adopt those. Okay, so that's one. Practice based on good science. We are already in the 21st century, we should apply good science in our training, in our competition, in our preparation of athletes. So as coaches, we are responsible for that. We have the responsibility for making sure that we keep up with our education as far as our coaching knowledge. This is something that at the UCI we have always stressed: rider hygiene. Okay, rider hygiene, number one. When we go out to train, the benefits of training, we do not get it. The physiological benefits from training, we do not get those during the training itself. In fact, our immunity and our is actually going down.
Yes.
As we train, and the
Yes.
harder we train, the longer we train, the greater is our exposure to illness and disease. The benefits from training only comes through rest and recovery, proper rest and proper recovery. That's when we improve our physiological parameters and also our immunity and all the good stuff that comes with training.
Yes.
So if you go out on a 2-hour ride or a 3-hour ride, when you get back, the best thing you could do and should do is to get out of your training clothes immediately. Don't sit around at the store and drinking coffee with your mates and all, and have all these bacteria-filled clothes on you.
Yes.
The first thing you need to do is get out of those. You have to get out of those. You should, in your training ride, have a wash kit with you, so that you can wipe down with disinfectant and water. If it is not possible to go back, home immediately after.
That's a very good point, Ramlan. Sorry to interject here. Perhaps in a practical way, would you say having wet wipes, scheduling, let's say you're doing a 4-hour ride, scheduling like every hour, you have a brief pause, wipe down, disinfect your hands, and then carry on. Just that 5-minute pause just to put this SOP in. Would that be something that's practical, and would you recommend something like that?
If that is something that you have already built into your training, say for example, we are going to be riding for 2 hours, but we are going to have a short break at the 1-hour mark to review what we have done, or for a little rest or some food, then yes, as soon as you stop, wipe down, and it's good to have disinfectant with you.
Yes.
And that is not just because of COVID-19, but that should be implemented all the time.
Yeah. A lot of people forget that when we cycle on the bike.
We're not doing this just because of
COVID-19.
COVID-19.
But it certainly pushed hygiene to the forefront of our concern now. If we were lax before, now we are really we are scared into taking actions, whether it's out of being scared or what. This is certainly good practice, isn't it? To
Yes,
carry
yes. So,
disinfectants
so
with us.
if you're doing a team ride and you have a team vehicle support, those are all the things that need to be in your
Team vehicle.
team vehicle.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Good point. Dato, how about what's your take? Best practices.
Well, I think I have to totally fully agree with what Ramlan has said, and I think as a coach himself, whatever best practices that he has said, I think that is something that all cyclists should follow. But on maybe on an administrative point of view,
Sure.
as we are more administrator, I would say that the importance of following the guidelines as per provided by the authorities, I think that would be something that we need to really, really listen very carefully, because we don't want government giving us some lax in doing some of the activities. For example, recently they have announced that we can go on a convoy, a bicycle convoy,
Yes.
with friends, of course, not too many, with a limited number of people. But we don't want that lax given by the government be taken for granted. And, that when they go for ride and, they start and they do not practice the social distancing, they start sitting together, hugging. Yes, everybody. I know, of course, it's all about fellowship. It's all about fellowship,
Yes.
about getting
Yes.
together and all that. But we don't want this kind of thing that may impact. And the government may realize that, hey, people are not listening to what they should be doing, and we may have to go back to certain take back
Oh
some of the
no.
and all that. So
Yes.
I think that is something that for the last 2 months, people have been staying at home. They've been just waiting to go out. So now the fact that you are able to go out, please, please, please practice
Yeah.
social distancing, good hygiene, wash your hands. Don't be too close with each other, etc. I think that's important. That's something that people should follow.
I think that is really fair point. We certainly do not want another shutting down. We do not want to go back to home sheltering again and not being able to go out for haircut, going out for cycling. So we all have the responsibility to act like adults. Now, more questions that I have here. What would racing look like after as countries gradually lift the lockdown order? And as we said, UCI have lined up races for the next few months. What do you think racing will look like? Do you see crowds running next to the cyclists, pushing them up the mountain like we have always seen in the past? Let's speculate. What do you take this away? Ramlan, again, would you like to head this off first?
I I would not want to see it.
Yes, neither do I.
In close quarters, not in 2020,
Okay.
maybe not even in 2021.
Yeah.
This will take a while for us to have it under control. Like as far as I understand this disease we have right now, or this pandemic we have right now. COVID-19 is unlike SARS that we had, I think, in 2003 or something. SARS came, it was deadly, but it was not, we didn't see the kind of infection
Yes.
level that we see right now.
Yes.
This one here is very infectious. And as long as if we can safely say, or the WHO or your local authorities can safely say, yes, COVID-19 is no longer with us, I will be very, very careful. Even the level of training right now, we cannot go back to the kind of training we used to do. We cannot ride in tight pelotons at this time. We shouldn't be riding in tight pelotons at this time. So as far as a spectatorship same thing, you know. Uh, it means social distancing. We still have to uh, uh, have some kind of entry and tracing availability capability for that. You know, we cannot walk into a stadium with 30,000 people and have fun enjoying ourselves, you know, and then go back and impact everybody else at home.
Sure.
That's should not be happening. And I think there are certain guidelines already laid out by our national authorities to manage that.
Now, you mentioned about we should not be riding in tight peloton. So, can you specify how do you think we should be riding or training at this time, Ramlan?
If you're going out and if your national authorities have already allowed you to go out, um, a lot of the work should be more time trialing type efforts. Uh, and even some countries have already, like Singapore, have already specified the kind of distance you have to maintain between one cyclist to another cyclist. You know, so you also have to understand, there's a lot of droplets that fly out of a cyclist's body. You know, if you are behind, imagine you are behind that
Yes,
cyclist or
yes.
right beside him, and you are on a 2 hour ride. This guy is, you know, sweating profusely, and you know, and you're going about 30 or 40 kilometers per hour. There's a lot of droplets
Yes.
that go back to the man on the second wheel, on the third wheel, and all.
Yes. Yes.
So we have to be careful about that.
Fair point.
And so better that if you're going to be riding outside, and which is great, you know, to be riding outside, but you need to ride more of time trialing mode.
Okay.
Instead of you know, tight peloton type of riding.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair point. Now, Dato, what about you? What do you think racing will look like in COVID-19?
Well, it's going to be different, Luis. It's going to be very different for sure.
Okay.
Short
Can
terms,
you tell us all the secrets that you guys talked about in the UCI top secret meeting?
No, I mean, don't expect to see large crowds, you know, cheering people, you know, cheering the best riders in their team. I mean, don't expect to see that in the near future. Even governments will not allow that
Yep.
to happen.
I'm glad
I
to
mean,
hear that.
I mean, even for example, I mean, next year we will be organizing Tour Langkawi, for example. Let's
Yes.
talk about that.
Okay.
If we organize Tour Langkawi, which is we are planning to have it in during the end of January, early February.
Yes.
Now, again, it's so, you know, the situation is so fluid. How is the COVID-19 situation? Will teams be able to come? What's the government's response to how crowd control? Or is it going to be a closed Tour Langkawi?
Oh no.
I mean, no one can really say. But
True.
again, I think going back to the question, we must adhere to what the government is saying. I think the Ministry of Health, they have done an excellent job.
Yeah.
In Malaysia, at least I would say, and we need to respect and listen to what they are saying and what is coming out from there. Like there are some countries, for example, like Vietnam, who seem to have really come out from this COVID thing pretty well. Like they even organized a domestic HTV Cup, the Ho Chi Minh City a TV Cup successfully. I mean,
Wow.
there were crowds, and they organized it 18 stages from, I think it was from the 19th of May, I think, and I think just concluded sometime last week.
Wow.
So I mean, things like that. Like Vietnam, I think was one of the few countries that actually organized a tour post-COVID, and so again, every country is very different. I mean, you would not be able to do that in, let's say in Hong Kong or maybe in China currently at the very short span of time.
Yes.
So again, I think it's something that we need to. It's very evolving sort of thing. We need to see how the situation will be. But I would tell to our fans that please do not go out for the short term. I mean, until we get a vaccine out of the way for COVID, and then at least if there's a vaccine, then okay, we are out of this COVID situation.
It is actually encouraging when you talk about Vietnam running a multi-stage race, organizing one, with crowds and held it successfully. What we have seen in this pandemic is also that various countries, some of them less famous or well known before COVID, have come up with innovation and their own ways of overcoming the problem and finding solution. For example, there are so many Malaysians who are proud of the country that we thought we were heading into a disaster when the pandemic first hit, but our health ministry, our frontline workers have done a splendid job. And now we are talking about Vietnam organizing a race successfully. So yeah, they are actually, if we exchange notes, there are lessons that we can learn from each other, not just from the superpowers, but for the smaller players too. Now, guys, I would like
But
to.
I think on this, I would like to give a shout out to all our frontliners who have done an excellent job. I mean, let it be the doctors, the nurses,
Yes.
the police, and everyone who has been, really been fighting for us in front there.
Sure. Now, I have one more question here. That is, now if you gentlemen have a chance to present a fresh idea to UCI or the Asian Cycling Confederation (ACC), what would that be? Now, which one of you gentlemen wants to go first?
I think we allow the UCI committee member to be.
Okay, fair point. Dato, please go ahead.
No, thank you, Ramlan. Thank you. No, I think I would say that the president of the UCI, he has been very they have been doing an excellent job in terms of expanding cycling and including promoting certain new disciplines. We also have the president who is very proactive under its Agenda 2022 program, and which he has been following up very closely. I would put it this way. I think in Asia, I would talk about Asia because it has something that has gone through my mind with all this latest with the Asian Road Championships being postponed and riders not being able to take part. And I think Asia has the capability of being a global leader and being involved. I would say that I would like to promote having to promote esports in the continental level as well. I mean, for example, a few weeks ago, we saw a great initiative by Cycling Selangor when they organized a Zwift with Mitchelton Scott. So I think that is, and even the Raja Muda of Selangor was also involved. I think e-sport would be a very something timely. We have seen people during the time of lockdown, during the MCO, they were at home. They were very much virtually cycling, and I think there is a huge way of expanding this, and it will be great to even organize a continental level e-sport championships in the near future, and I think that would be very much welcome. I mean, it's all about ensuring that it is regulated properly through the proper platform so that we can name our Asian champion in the near future.
That's certainly thinking outside the box. We can see that almost all the World Tour teams have some sort of e-racing going on. We know that in Team Ineos, Rohan Dennis was the e-racing champion of the team. So yeah, that's a fresh idea. We can see that in esports, especially because of the pandemic, when we could not ride outside, people kind of like network with different teams around the globe and race each other. why not? It logistically it doesn't cost that much. Certainly a lot cheaper than flying to another country and do all that. So thank you, Dato, for your ideas. And Ramlan, you have anything
Okay. Yeah.
for us?
From, let me see, 2012. Around 2012, I think UCI had a strategy in place already to promote cycling as a world sport. Um, the perception that cycling is a European sport is still very much alive right there. We want to promote cycling as a world sport, and the problem now is Asia and Africa is lagging behind as far as medal count at the Olympic Games. So we need to kind of bridge the gap. And the only way to bridge the gap is we've got a lot of advances in equipment. We have a lot of advances in equipment. But coming from a coaching standpoint, we are still behind. We are still behind as far as coaching and coaching technology is concerned, and coaching science. And this is something that I think we need to promote even harder for Asia. So we need to get up to speed for all the countries in Asia as far as coaching knowledge is concerned. So that is something that I will, if I have a chance to push it to UCI, that would be something that I will push for. Greater coaching education and coaching education availability to countries around Asia. Right now, it's very limited actually, still very, very limited as far as coaching education for cycling around Asia.
Okay, fair point. When we talked about cycling technology and coaching methodology, it's a lot. What we have seen is there's a lot of it was done this way in the past. I was coached this way, so now I'm coaching this way. Do you still see a lot of that going on? Ramlan, you travel around the region more and you deal with coaches. Is that still going around a lot, or is there like breakthrough? Are the new generation of coaches willing to stake their reputation and do things differently in sight of new technologies and new science that is being promoted? What's your take?
Unfortunately, coaching methodologies from my standpoint have not changed much over the years, and that is kind of disappointing actually for me. We need to upgrade the coaches. Some of the things that I've seen that coaching are doing now was what I was doing, in the 1970s. That was what I was taught how to do in the 1970s.
When
And
you
they're
were a
not
Shimano racer, when you were racing for
not
Shimano.
relevant, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the things and practices we were doing then are not relevant today. We've got all this technology, advances in equipment, but we are not fully utilizing it because of the lack of understanding in basic coaching knowledge. So we need to go down to the basics and learn that foundation well.
What's holding coaches back? Is it ignorance? Is it the lack of knowledge? Is it the lack of teaching? Or is it, peer pressure, cultural thing? My Sifu has done it this way. There's no way I'm going to change what was done in the past. What's holding us back?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of information out there already. It is the question is taking this information and putting into practice.
Yes.
And the willingness to take this to put this into practice.
It requires us to be different, isn't
the
it?
discomfort of change.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of us are not willing to change. not willing to change our methods. I have had to change many times over the years as new information becomes available.
I agree.
When I first started out, a lot of it was trial and error.
Yeah.
There was no science behind it. There's
Yes.
no data to back what we were doing. But now those are available already.
Yes.
We've got all the technologies that can allow us to collect those data.
Yes.
And then for us to reflect and look back and see, hey, were our practices relevant or not relevant? If it is not relevant, where did we go wrong? Change.
Yes.
It is that willingness to change that is very difficult to come by, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we were just talking to John Beasley last week, and he shared with us how after Rio Olympic, the whole country was in euphoria. Malaysia won a bronze medal in track cycling, the first ever medal in track cycling. And yet, 5 weeks after Rio, they ripped their playbook apart. It's time to rebuild. Is bronze medal enough for us? No, we want gold. So let's rip the playbook. Let's start from scratch. How can we do this better? Let's look at it from a fresh pair of eyes. Let's not assume that our way is always right. Let's not make any assumption. And I thought that was audacious, that was visionary, and that was honest. There was huge desire that was demonstrated, and hopefully, who knows? Hopefully, we are all moving the dial forward. This is what this video cast is about. Is hopefully by engaging and educating and linking people together, we can kind of like move the dial forward one step at a time. And we are all doing our own bit. And certainly, Dato, you're doing it at the management level. You have big influence at the management level, at the continental level, at UCI level. And Ramlan, you have your influencing coaches that you have the privilege of educating. And for me, a coach in a state team, hopefully influence the people that are around me, the athletes under my care, all of us moving it forward. And on that note, then, gentlemen, thank you very much. This is a great fun. It's certainly very engaging to have two gentlemen of your expertise and background and history to talk to. And please stick around. I just want to make a quick announcement about next week. Next week, we will have John Beasley back again at 4 p.m. next week. His Skype call with us was disconnected. He was having connectivity issues last week. So he's coming back on next week to finish our interview and a discussion about technology and preparing for the Olympics. We have not even touched on the WXR, the world's most expensive bike, and we will get down to that next week. So, gentlemen, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening and joining this podcast. And it's my pleasure to have you, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye, guys.